Humans walked away, and the Galactic Council knew they were fated for doom. Part 1. The great dome of Varel Prime shimmered under twin suns, its walls made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Inside, 17 species sat in a wide circle, their forms as different as the stars they came from. Some had too many eyes, others none at all. Some spoke with voices, others with thought waves that hummed in the air like distant music. They were the Galactic Council, the oldest and most powerful alliance in known space. And today they were afraid, not of war, not of plague, but of silence. For 3 full cycles, no signal had come from Earth, no trade requests, no diplomatic updates, no greetings on the shared comms net. The human embassy on Kesar 9, once bright with chatter and laughter, now stood dark and empty. The humans had packed up quietly, turned off their lights, and left without a word. Not even a goodbye. Archon Lyra Vaughn tapped her long silver fingers on the arm of her chair. She was Mixai, her skin smooth and damp like riverstone, her voice low and calm even when her mind raced. She replayed the last message from Earth one more time. It was short, just a man in a plain gray jacket, standing in a room with sunlight through a window. His name was Daniel Shaw. He had been humanity's voice on the Council for 7 years. "We've seen enough," he said, his eyes steady. "We're going home. Don't follow." Then the screen went black. No static, no error code. Just nothing. Lyra had asked every species in the chamber if they knew what it meant. The Krell commander snapped his mandibles and called it cowardice. The Xanthari elder whispered that it felt like a warning. But no one knew for sure. And that was the problem. In a galaxy built on control, on order, on knowing what every species was doing at all times, the unknown was dangerous, far from the dome. On a quiet stretch of Oregon coast, Daniel Shaw walked barefoot along the wet sand. The ocean rolled in with a sound that had not changed in 10,000 years. Behind him, his daughter Leah skipped flat stones across the bay, counting each bounce with serious concentration. She was 10, with her mother's dark curls and her father's quiet eyes. She hadn't asked why they left the stars. She just seemed glad to be back. Nora Shaw watched from the porch of their small wooden house. She held a mug of tea, steam curling into the cool morning air. She had been a xenobiologist once, studying alien plant life on 3 different worlds. Now she grew tomatoes and basil in a backyard garden. She missed the science sometimes, but she didn't miss the fear, because that was the truth no one on the Council wanted to say out loud. Humanity had been afraid. Not of aliens, most were kind or at least polite, but of what joining them had done to Earth. The promises had sounded good at first. Faster travel, better medicine, a seat at the table of civilizations. But the price was higher than anyone expected. Earth had started changing. Cities grew taller but emptier. Children learned Council standard before their own languages. Jobs vanished as off-world corporations took over farms, factories, even schools. And the wars, oh, the wars. Not Earth's wars, but the Council's. Humans were asked to send soldiers to fight in conflicts they didn't understand, on planets they'd never heard of for reasons that sounded noble but felt hollow. Daniel had seen it up close. He'd sat in Council meetings where entire species were voted into restructuring with a simple majority. He'd watched as ancient cultures were labeled inefficient and quietly erased. And he'd realized something terrible. The galaxy wasn't a family. It was a machine, and humanity was just another gear. So they walked away, not with bombs, not with threats, just a quiet decision, made by every nation on Earth in secret agreement. One day all human ships returned home. All embassies closed. All data links severed. Even the deep space beacons that marked Earth's place in the star charts went dark. It was as if humanity had never left the planet at all. Back on Varel Prime, the debate grew louder. The Krell demanded action. "They broke the Unity Accord," their commander hissed. "We must enforce compliance." Lyra shook her head. "The Accord says no species may be forced to join. It also says none may be punished for leaving." "But what if they're hiding something?" asked a young Xanthari delegate, his voice trembling. "What if they found a weapon? Or a new kind of power?" Lyra didn't answer. She stared at the empty space where Daniel Shaw's image had been. She remembered how calm he looked. Not angry, not scared, just done, and that worried her more than any weapon ever could. On Earth, the sun climbed higher. Leah ran up to her father, breathless, holding a perfect skipping stone. "Look, Dad." "5 bounces!" Daniel smiled and ruffled her hair. That's my girl. Inside the house, Nora set down her mug and opened a drawer. She pulled out an old photo. Her, Daniel, and Leah standing in front of the Eiffel Tower back when Earth still felt like a place worth showing off. She traced the edges with her thumb. No aliens in the picture. No translators, no fear. Just them. She didn't know what the council would do next. Maybe they'd send ships. Maybe they'd try to talk. Maybe they'd just wait and watch. But she knew one thing for sure. Earth was no longer theirs to control. Humanity had chosen itself. And in a galaxy that valued power above all else, that choice might be the most dangerous thing of all. Daniel took Leah's hand and walked back toward the house. The ocean kept rolling in, steady and endless. Somewhere far above, in the cold dark between stars, the council watched and wondered. And for the first time in centuries, they did not have an answer. The silence stretched, and in that silence, something new began to grow. The council did not wait long. 3 days after Earth's silence became undeniable, a secret order went out from Varel Prime. Not to attack, not to demand answers, but to watch, to listen, to find out what humanity was hiding. They chose Jason Miller for the mission because he was human, but not really. Born on a colony ship, raised in a council training academy, he had never set foot on Earth. He spoke English like a textbook, ate nutrient paste like everyone else, and wore the gray uniform of the Galactic Surveillance Corps without question. His file said he was loyal. His eyes said something else. Commander Elise Boyd met him in a dim corridor deep inside the orbital station Kesar 9. She was tall, with sharp features and a voice that cut through noise like a blade. She handed him a small data chip. "Your ship is ready," she said. "Go to the edge of the Sol system. Scan everything. Record everything. But do not enter Earth's atmosphere. Do not make contact. Do you understand?" Jason nodded. "Yes, Commander." "Good. Because if you do, you won't be coming back. And neither will we." He boarded the scout vessel Whisper alone. It was small, fast, and nearly invisible to sensors. As it slipped away from the station, Jason looked back once at the bright lights of Kesar 9. He had spent his whole life there. Yet something in his chest pulled him toward the dark patch of space where Earth waited. 2 weeks later, Whisper drifted just beyond Neptune's orbit. The Sol system looked peaceful from here. Yellow sun, quiet planets, no signs of war or panic. Jason activated the long-range scanners. He expected to see human ships patrolling, defense grids humming, maybe even weapons pointed at the stars. Instead, he found nothing. No signals, no traffic, no military presence at all. Earth had truly gone quiet. He moved closer, staying in the shadow of Jupiter's moons. His sensors swept the inner system. Mars was empty. The moon base was dark. Even the old space docks near Earth's equator sat abandoned, solar panels cracked and drifting. It was as if humanity had packed up and vanished overnight. But then something strange appeared on his screen. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, near a place called the Mariana Trench, there was a faint energy pulse. Not artificial, not natural either. It pulsed in a rhythm that matched no known power source. Another signal came from the Himalayas, low, steady, and ancient feeling. And a third from under the ice of Antarctica. Jason frowned. These weren't human-made. The energy signatures were too old, too smooth. They felt like they had been there for thousands of years, waiting. He checked his orders again. Do not make contact. But what if this was the reason Earth left? What if they discovered something the Council didn't know about? Back on Varel Prime, the debate had turned tense. The Krell pushed harder for action. "They are hiding a weapon," their commander insisted. "We must act before it is used." Lyra Vaughn remained calm. "We have no proof." "Proof?" The Krell snapped. "Their silence is proof enough. No species walks away from the Council unless they have something to hide." Lyra didn't argue. She knew fear when she heard it. The Krell weren't angry. They were scared. And fear made even the smartest beings reckless. Meanwhile, on Earth, Daniel Shaw stood in his backyard, watching the stars come out. Leah was asleep inside, curled up with a book about whales. Nora was washing dishes, humming an old song. Life was simple now. No alerts, no meetings, no voices from the sky telling them what to do. But Daniel couldn't relax. He knew the Council wouldn't just let them go. They would send someone, maybe a ship, maybe a spy. He had spent years studying their ways. They always watched, always tested, always needed to be in control. He walked to the shed and opened a hidden panel in the floor. Beneath it was a small console, powered by a geothermal line running from deep underground. On the screen, a map of Earth glowed softly. 3 red dots pulsed in the Pacific, the Himalayas, and Antarctica. The nodes were awake. They had been for weeks. Marcus Cole had warned him this would happen. Marcus was an old friend, a linguist who had spent his life studying ancient human symbols. He lived in a cabin in Colorado now, surrounded by books and rock carvings. Last week he had sent Daniel a message. They're stirring, the ones who came before. Daniel didn't know who they were, but he knew the nodes weren't weapons. They were something else, something older than cities, older than writing, something that had been sleeping under Earth's skin since long before humans walked upright. In space, Jason made a decision. He couldn't just watch. He had to know. He steered Whisper toward Earth, staying low and slow. He entered the atmosphere over the Pacific, cloaked and silent. His sensors locked onto the strongest signal, the one in the trench. As he passed over Oregon, something odd happened. His ship's systems flickered. Not from damage, from something else. A wave of calm washed over him. His hands stopped shaking. The tight knot in his chest loosened. For the first time in years, he felt human. He saw lights below, not city lights, but small, warm glows from houses. He saw a child running through a field, a woman hanging laundry, a man standing alone under the stars. He remembered his mother's voice, faint but clear in his memory. She used to sing him a lullaby in English. He hadn't heard it in 20 years. Now the words came back. Hush now, don't you cry. Tears filled his eyes. He wasn't just a scout. He wasn't just a tool for the council. He was Jason. He was human. He turned off his comms, broke protocol, and sent a single unencrypted message, not to the council but to a frequency he found in an old Earth archive. It was a public channel, unused for years. He didn't know if anyone would hear it. But he had to try. Hello, he said softly. My name is Jason Miller. I'm coming down. On the ground, Daniel's console beeped. A signal, weak but clear. He read the words on the screen and felt a strange mix of dread and hope. Someone was coming, but not as an enemy. Not yet. Nora came outside, wiping her hands on a towel. What is it? Daniel looked at her, then at the sky. We're not alone anymore. High above, Jason guided his ship toward a quiet stretch of coastline. He didn't know what waited for him down there, but for the first time he wasn't afraid to find out. Daniel Shaw did not sleep that night. He sat on the porch with a blanket over his shoulders, watching the eastern sky where Jason's ship would appear. Nora stayed inside with Leah, who had woken up once, confused by the low hum in the air. Is it thunder? She had asked. Nora told her it was just the wind, but it wasn't the wind. By dawn, the hum faded. A small craft no bigger than a car rested in the field behind their house. It gleamed silver in the morning light, smooth and quiet. No weapons, no markings, just a door that slid open slowly. A young man stepped out. He wore a gray uniform, but it was wrinkled and his boots were scuffed. He looked around like someone seeing trees for the first time. His eyes landed on Daniel and he froze. Daniel stood and walked toward him slowly, hands open at his sides. You came down, he said. Jason swallowed. I wasn't supposed to. You heard the call. Jason blinked. What call? Daniel didn't answer right away. He led Jason inside where Nora made coffee and toast. Leah peeked from the hallway, curious but quiet. Jason stared at the kitchen, the kettle whistling, the smell of bread, the way sunlight hit the wooden table. It felt real in a way nothing in his life ever had. Later, they drove to Colorado in an old electric truck. Jason sat in the back, wrapped in a borrowed jacket, watching mountains rise like old bones from the earth. Daniel didn't speak much. He didn't need to. The land itself was speaking. They found Marcus Cole in a cabin built into the side of a pine-covered hill. He was thin, with wild white hair and eyes that seemed to see through walls. He took one look at Jason and said, You feel it too, don't you? Jason nodded. Like something's waking up. Marcus smiled. Good. That means it's working. Inside the cabin, walls were covered in drawings, cave symbols, star maps, strange spirals that looked both ancient and alive. Marcus pointed to one etched into a flat stone. This was found in France 30,000 years ago. Same symbol shows up in Peru, India, Australia. No contact between those places. No way they shared it. He tapped another mark. This one? Matches the energy pattern from the node under Mount Shasta. We found it last month. Daniel stepped closer. What is it? A language, Marcus said. Not for speaking, for feeling. The ones who came before didn't talk with words. They shared thoughts through resonance. Earth was their archive, their sanctuary. Jason frowned. Who were they? No name, no face. But they left something behind. Not a weapon. A choice. That night they hiked to a cave high in the Rockies. Marcus carried a small device that glowed when near the symbols. Inside, the walls shimmered faintly, as if lit from within. Leah, who had insisted on coming, placed her hand on the stone. The whole cave pulsed with soft light. She's connected, Marcus whispered. Leah closed her eyes. They're sad, she said. They watched everyone forget. Daniel knelt beside her. Forget what? How to listen. Back on Varel Prime, the council grew restless. Jason's signal had vanished the moment he entered Earth's atmosphere. No distress call. No explosion. Just silence. Commander Elise Boyd stood before the Archon, her face tight. He broke orders, she said. He's compromised. Lyra Vaughn studied the empty feed from the Sol system. Or he found something worth breaking them for. The Krell slammed a claw on the table. Send a fleet. Blockade the system. If they won't talk, we'll make them. Lyra didn't argue. She knew the vote would pass. Fear had taken root, and fear always demanded action. But as the others shouted, she thought of Daniel Shaw's calm face in that final message. He hadn't looked like a man hiding a weapon. He looked like a man who finally knew the truth. On Earth, the truth was spreading. In the days that followed, people began to dream the same dreams. Fishermen in Japan saw cities under the sea. Farmers in Kenya heard songs in languages they'd never learned. Children in Brazil drew the same spiral symbol without being taught. The nodes were not just machines. They were memories. And humanity was remembering. Daniel took Jason to Mount Shasta. Beneath the snow and rock, a hidden chamber opened when Leah placed her palm on a flat stone. Inside, light swirled like liquid. Jason felt it pull at his chest, not painful but deep, like a long-lost voice calling his name. This is why we left, Daniel said. The council thinks power is control. But real power is knowing when to stop, when to listen, when to walk away. Jason looked at him. What happens now? Now, Daniel said. We show them what they've forgotten. That evening, as the sun set behind the peaks, the first node activated, not with fire or sound, but with a wave of quiet energy that spread through the planet like breath. Every human felt it, some as warmth, some as tears, some as a sudden understanding of a loved one's pain. The world did not change in a day, but something inside it did. Far above, on the edge of the solar system, the first council warships appeared. Sleek, dark, and armed. They moved in formation, ready to enforce order. But they did not know that Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a mirror, and mirrors do not fight. They reveal. Jason stood on the mountain with Leah, watching the stars. He no longer felt like a spy. He felt like he was home. For the first time, he understood why humans walked away. They weren't running from the galaxy. They were protecting it from itself. Down in the valley, Nora lit a lantern and placed it on the porch. Just one small light in the dark, but it was enough. The blockade came quietly. No fanfare, no warning. Just 5 warships sliding into position beyond Neptune, their hulls dark against the starfield. Each one carried the mark of a different council species, the jagged wings of the Krell, the smooth curves of the Mixai, the sharp angles of the Zinthari. They did not fire. They did not speak. They simply waited like wolves circling a den. Commander Elise Boyd stood on the bridge of the lead ship, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. She had argued against this. We don't know what they've done, she told the council. Rushing in could make it worse. But the Krell had won the vote. Fear had spoken louder than caution. On Earth, no alarm sounded. No military scrambled. The world went on as it had for weeks. Children walked to school. Farmers tended fields. Old men played chess in parks. But beneath the surface, something hummed. The nodes were awake now, all 3 of them pulsing in rhythm with the planet's core, and Leah Shaw could feel them like a second heartbeat. Daniel stood with Marcus on a hill outside their town, watching the sky. They're here, he said. Marcus nodded. They think we're hiding a bomb. Maybe we are, Daniel said softly. just not the kind they expect. Back in Oregon, Jason helped Nora board up the windows, not out of fear but out of habit. He moved like he belonged there now, like he'd always known how to hammer a nail or stir soup on the stove. Leah sat on the porch steps, drawing in a notebook. Her sketches showed ships, yes, but also faces. Sad faces. Guilty faces. Faces from worlds she'd never seen. "They're scared," she said when Jason sat beside her. "Who is?" "The people on the ships." Jason looked up at the sky. He couldn't see the fleet from here, but he could feel it. The tension, the readiness to strike. He thought of his training, of the drills where he learned to target, to eliminate, to obey. But now all he felt was sorrow. Not for Earth, for them. That night, Daniel made a choice. He walked to the shed and placed his hand on the console. A soft chime filled the air. Then deep beneath Mount Shasta, the first true activation began. Not a weapon, not a shield, a signal, but not one sent through wires or waves. This signal traveled through space not as data, but as feeling. It reached the blockade an hour later. On the Krell warship, Commander Vrax was reviewing attack plans when it hit. One moment he was cold and focused. The next he was kneeling on the floor, tears streaming down his armored face. In his mind he saw villages burning on a planet called Yen 7. He saw small hands reaching from rubble. He heard a voice, his own years ago, saying, "Collateral damage is acceptable." He had buried that memory. Buried it deep. But now it was here, clear as daylight. On the Meeksai vessel, Archon Lyra Vaughn gasped as visions flooded her mind. She saw her people's secret labs where young Xanthari were bred for obedience, their wild minds smoothed into silence. She saw records erased, protests drowned in lies, whole generations taught that freedom was chaos. She had known, of course. But knowing and feeling were different things. Across the fleet, every being, soldier, pilot, commander, was struck by the same wave. Not pain, not punishment, truth. Their own hidden truths, the ones they'd locked away to keep moving forward. The galaxy had built its peace on forgetting, and Earth had just turned on the light. Elise Boyd clutched the edge of her console, shaking. She saw herself as a young officer, signing orders that sent human scouts into deadly zones for the greater good. She saw their faces. She remembered how she told herself it was necessary. Now she wasn't so sure. Down on Earth, nothing exploded. No beams of light shot into space. No shields flared. The only sign of change was the sky itself. Above the Pacific, above the Himalayas, above Antarctica, the air shimmered like heat over desert sand, not blocking, not attacking, just showing. Jason stood in the field behind the house looking up. "It's working," he whispered. Nora joined him, Leah at her side. "What is it doing?" "Making them see," Jason said. "Not with eyes. With hearts." On the lead Krell ship, Vrax stood slowly. His claws trembled. He looked at his crew, many of them young, many of them scared. "Stand down," he said. "What?" His second hissed. "We have orders." "We have shame," Vrax replied. "And that is heavier." One by one, the ships powered down their weapons. Not because they were forced, but because they could no longer pretend. Back on Varel Prime, the council chamber was silent. The feed from the Sol system showed the fleet motionless, lights dimming. Lyra Vaughn closed her eyes. She understood now. Humanity hadn't built a doomsday device. They had awakened a mirror, and the galaxy was not ready for what it saw. In Oregon, Daniel walked back to the house. The night was cool, the stars bright. Leah ran to him and hugged his legs. "Did we win?" she asked. Daniel picked her up. "We didn't fight," he said. "So there's nothing to win. But maybe we helped them remember." Inside, Nora poured tea for everyone. Jason sat at the table, quiet, staring at his hands like they were new. Outside, the world slept. But something had shifted. The blockade still floated in space, but it was no longer a threat. It was a question, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had no easy answer. The nodes hummed softly beneath the Earth, not loud, not angry, just present, like a parent waiting for a lost child to come home. And far above, in the cold dark, the first ship turned away, not in defeat, but in shame. Then another, and another. Earth did not cheer. It did not boast. It simply stood quiet and whole as the stars watched and wondered. The silence returned. But this time it was full of meaning. The last ship left the Sol system 3 days after the truth wave passed through it. It was a Mike-Sci vessel, small and silver, moving slowly as if carrying a heavy thought. No message was sent. No signal flashed. It just turned and sailed back toward the stars, its lights dimming like a sigh. On Earth, life went on. Children played in sprinklers. Bees buzzed in clover fields. Leah Shaw rode her bike down the dirt road, her hair flying behind her like a banner. She didn't know about fleets or councils or ancient nodes. She just knew the sky felt lighter now, like a storm had passed without ever raining. Daniel stood in the garden with Nora, pulling weeds from between rows of tomatoes. His hands were dirty, his shirt damp with sweat. He hadn't worn a suit in months. He hadn't checked a Galactic feed in longer, and he didn't miss it. Jason lived in the small cabin behind the house now. He helped fix the roof, chopped wood, and taught Leah how to tie sailor's knots. He still woke sometimes in the night, heart racing, thinking he heard orders in his ear, but then he'd hear the wind in the pines or Nora humming in the kitchen, and he'd remember where he was. Who he was. Marcus Cole sent word from Colorado. The dreams had stopped. The symbols on the cave walls no longer glowed. The nodes were quiet again, not dead, just resting. They did what they came to do, he wrote. They reminded us. And that was the real doom the Council had feared, not fire, not war. Remembrance. For centuries, the galaxy had moved forward by forgetting the cost of progress, the weight of silence, the faces left behind in the name of order. Humanity hadn't brought a weapon. They had brought a mirror, and mirrors don't destroy. They heal if you let them. On Varel Prime, the Council did not meet for a full cycle. When they finally gathered, the chamber felt different, smaller. The Krell commander sat with his claws folded, his voice softer. The Zenthari elder spoke of listening, not ruling. Even Elise Boyd, now back from the Edge of Soul, said little, only that she had seen something she could not unsee. Lyra Vaughn did not call for new laws or punishments. She simply said, "We were wrong to fear their silence. Silence is not emptiness. Sometimes it is the space where truth grows." One by one, species began to change. The Krell opened their sealed archives. The Mixai freed the mind-conditioned laborers from their orbital farms. The Zenthari stopped rewriting their history books. It was slow, messy, painful, but it was real. No one came to Earth, no messages were sent. The galaxy understood now. This was not a planet to be managed or studied or controlled. It was a place that had chosen itself. And in doing so, it had given others permission to do the same. In Oregon, autumn came early. Leaves turned golden red, falling like quiet applause. Daniel raked them into piles while Leah jumped in, laughing. Jason sat on the porch steps, whittling a piece of cedar into the shape of a bird. Nora brought out mugs of hot cider, steam curling into the cool air. They didn't talk about the ships. They didn't talk about the future. They just sat together, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The kind of moment that used to feel small but now felt like everything. Far away on 1,000 worlds, beings looked up at their own skies and wondered. Some wept, some argued. Some walked away from their posts and never came back. A farmer on a dusty moon stopped plowing his field and asked his neighbor, "Why do we do this?" A teacher on a glass spire city erased the lesson about lesser species and wrote one word instead. Remember, the galaxy did not collapse. It bent. And in that bending, it found room to breathe. Leah came inside that night with dirt on her knees and a smooth stone in her pocket. She placed it on the windowsill next to a photo of her family. "For luck," she said. Nora kissed her forehead. "You don't need luck, sweetheart. You've got us." Later, as the house grew quiet, Daniel stepped outside one last time. The stars were bright, clearer than he'd ever seen them. No satellites. No patrol routes. Just the old honest sky. He thought of all the years spent trying to prove humanity belonged among the stars. And now he realized they never needed to prove it at all. They belonged right here. Jason joined him, hands in his pockets. "Do you think they'll ever come back?" Daniel shook his head. Not as they were. But maybe, as something better. They stood in silence for a long time. No words were needed. The wind carried the scent of pine and earth. Somewhere an owl called. The world was whole again, and in the deep quiet between heartbeats, the galaxy began to heal. Not because Earth had fought, but because Earth had walked away. Not in anger, not in fear, but in love. For itself, for its children, for the simple truth that some things are worth protecting by letting go. The stars watched. And for the first time in a very long time, they did not judge. They simply shone.